One of the extraordinary things is, as you're suggesting, diet and lifestyle heavily influences this same epigenome, these same DNA methylation and demethylation patterns. So what we're doing every day has an influence here. And that's what our study showed. So we looked at epigenetics and specifically DNA methylation using our diet and lifestyle intervention. And we saw that using very simple, very safe intervention, we were able to reverse biological age. So we slowed down the aging trajectory in our population by over 3 years and 8 weeks as compared to the control group, which is absolutely
3 years.
remarkable.
3 years. I just want to highlight that. Yeah. Just through food, through nutrition.
Yeah, just through food. Well, food and lifestyle. We wanted them to exercise, get enough sleep, and we wanted them to engage in meditation. So the take home of what we demonstrated is Yamanaka factors are not, rapamycin are not, moving to outer space are not, you need to be thinking about these things in our daily life. So there's much that we can do right now and that we should absolutely be doing right now, while all the hubbub happens over there and we can talk about that or listen to, read about it, et cetera. But we need to be doing it. And we know that we absolutely can influence profoundly epigenetic expression. And as we talked about with the Overcalyx study and Dutch hunger winter and so forth, we know that this can influence generationally. So we did, amazingly, we were thinking about epigenetics and DNA methylation in relation to cancer. It was somewhat serendipitous how we actually got to this, because at the time of our study design in late 2017, early 2018, and actually starting our study, we ran our study 2018 through 2019, nobody demonstrated, there was no evidence for biological age reversal in humans at that time at all. We knew that there was a biological age clock available so that we could look at whether we changed things, but I wasn't holding my breath. I was interested in, so my original investigation in in DNA methylation was with regard to cancer, because cancer, really all the chronic diseases of aging, but especially cancer, well, at least there's a ton of research in cancer, hijacks epigenetic expression, hijacks it, takes it over from us, kicks us out of the driver's seat, turns genes on and off right in the tumor microenvironment for its own proliferation. And as a functional medicine clinician, my question was, could there be anything in functional medicine that we're doing wrong? Could we be supplying supplements, et cetera? Could we be sort of pushing this forward? And my conclusion was the safest thing to do was a diet and lifestyle intervention, leaning on that primarily. And then if somebody needs supplements, layering in that, layering those in afterwards.
But the foundational basics are mastered.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so what ended up, we were given an unrestricted grant to study this from Metagenics. And what I ended up learning over this journey was that, as I said before, the changes in aging that happen are the changes that happen in cancer, are the changes that happen in heart disease.
Yes.
So we, by entering into the conversation over here, by considering cancer as our original question, we were in fact looking at the changes that happen in aging. And so then our first question was, are we actually changing aging? We will come back and look to see if we've changed some of those genes and that are changed in cancer. And the answer, I can say the preliminary answer is yes. It looks like we've turned back on protective, anti-cancer genes and so forth. And I have to write that up and publish on it. But our first question was, if we're changing aging, if we're making people biologically younger, we should, by extension, be improving health span, improving lifespan, and reducing risk of all the chronic diseases of aging, because aging looks like those. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
So we happen to be we happen to be preceding the wave, almost just by serendipity in how we, and then the first study. So we were wrapping up our study, and then the first study that showed biological age reversal in humans was published with huge fanfare, just as we were, unpacking our data findings. And that was just a group of 9 men. They had no control group. And they did a year-long intervention of growth hormone, metformin, DHEA, I think vitamin D and zinc also. So growth hormone injections, like a long and fairly aggressive protocol, and they reversed biological age by I think 2.5 years in that year-long intervention.
It'll be interesting to compare. I would be really interested to compare, for example, we know that for men, we can reach sort of peak growth hormone after about, call it an hour or so of exercise. Like you can really drive up growth hormone through resistance training, for example. It'll be interesting to compare, to have maybe there's a second or like there's a control, and then we have the growth hormone intervention, and maybe there's a tertiary group where it's like, can we just get them to lift some weights? And see what, and I say that sort of tongue in cheek because yes, I'm all for medication when it's required, but it's in my, and I would think that you share this, you may or may not, but I think that it's then and only then after you've exhausted the mastery of, let's say, eating foods that are going to be really great methyl donors, it's going to be resistance training. It's going to be stress management. And for all the women that are listening here, this is like stress management. Like I'm all for, I lift weights. I will lift weights until my last day. But if you don't take counsel on stress management, because it's silent in the same way that cancer is silent, in the same way that epigenetic changes are silent, you will age faster. And
no doubt about it. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to just go back to the TRIM study. It was called the growth hormone injection study, and say that his original interest was improving thymus gland. So he's like all about the immune system. And then they layered on looking at biological aging, and he found his finding. And they're studying it. So stay tuned. There'll be more data on that whole protocol.
Super interesting.
But 100%. So we included, so when we designed our program, the diet is, and we'll talk about this in a minute, packed with what we call epinutrients. These are nutrients with evidence behind them for favorably influencing epigenetic expression. Packed. So really every forkful should be speaking to optimal gene expression. But we had a meditation. So we wanted people to practice the relaxation response, just a basic breathing exercise for 10 minutes twice per day. And to your point, the clock that we used in our study, 25% of it is regulated by glucocorticoids. They're called glucocorticoid response elements, and they will influence genetic expression through cortisol. So to me, that suggests that 25% of this particular clock we used is about the stress experience. That's more than any other variable that we studied. So to me, stress is gasoline on the fire of aging, no doubt about it. And we can see, the diseases of the diseases of aging, the chronic diseases of aging. We can see, the psychic experience, et cetera. We can see that stress just aggravates and pushes forward all of those. So it's potently pro-aging. Conversely, when we bring it down a notch, yoga, meditation, tai chi, et cetera, these are all anti-aging. These promote favorable gene expression. People who are practice meditators are biologically younger. But for those of us who aren't going to retire to the monastery on the mountain, what's really cool and heartening is that just one meditation experience, and we know if you're a new meditator, you've got this crazy monkey mind, but even just starting the experience can change gene expression towards the better. However, if you keep doing it, it's just going to move, like a wildfire through the rest of your genes and influence genetic expression, body wide. So it's an extraordinary phenomena, and we'll get the lasting influence if we continue to get engaged in the practice. So one meditative event can have favorable expression, but we can really turn biological age around if we commit to it. It's extraordinary, and it's very cool. And the same thing with exercise. And let me tell you it's same thing. So one exercise event can have favorable changes. Practiced exercisers are biologically younger. There is some, like if you want to go really over the top, there's some evidence that excess exercise, and this makes sense, can be pro-aging.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
We all know. Like I used to be a competitive cyclist, and I would get sick at the end of every season. I always had sinusitis or something like that because I just burned the candle, pushed it for really hard, and my immune system was suppressed after that, and I would get sick. But in general, exercising is one of the most potent anti-aging elixirs that we have. And what's so badass to me is that we can, if we're preconception, we can hand some of that information down to our offspring. Isn't that cool?
I love that.
You can hand that 6-pack ab down to your kid, but you can hand down some of that information. And conversely, if you're not engaging in it, that information is going to go too.
Right. Yeah. So it sort of highlights the saying, you got it from your mama. Like it gives you more bragging rights. Like you got that muscle from your mama.